Men Liberation presents the psychology of Gen X on women. What if I told you that Generation X women possess one of the most misunderstood psychological profiles in modern society? While everyone debates boomers versus millennials, there's an entire generation of women who've been quietly reshaping our world without asking for credit or recognition. Welcome, please hit the subscribe button. Born between 1965 and 1980, Generation X women experienced something unprecedented in human history. They were the first generation of girls to grow up with true independence thrust upon them, not as empowerment, but as pure necessity. Picture this: you're 8 years old, walking home from school to an empty house.
Nos smartphones, nos security cameras, nos check INS.
You unlock the door, make yourself a snack, complete your homework alone, and wait for hours until someone comes home. This wasn't happening to a few kids here and there. By 1984, over 7 million children were regularly unsupervised after school. But for Gen X girls, this experience carried additional psychological weight. They were learning self-reliance while simultaneously absorbing cultural messages about what women should be. The result? A generation of women who developed an almost contradictory relationship with independence and vulnerability. Here's what makes Gen X women psychologically fascinating. They learned early that emotional survival meant not depending on others, yet they were raised during a time when women were still expected to be relationship-focused and nurturing. This created an internal tension that shaped their entire approach to life. They became fiercely independent while maintaining deep capacity for connection, but always on their own terms. The empty house experience didn't just teach them self-sufficiency. It wired their brains around consequence management in ways that profoundly affected their relationships with men, careers, and motherhood. When their parents finally arrived home, rules were immediate and non-negotiable. There was no emotional processing, no lengthy discussions about feelings. This created what psychologists call high-contingency thinking, where every decision is evaluated for its potential fallout. Fast forward to their teenage years and early adulthood. Gen X women watched their mother's generation fight for workplace equality, often at tremendous personal cost. They saw women who'd sacrificed everything for family stability, only to face divorce rates that skyrocketed through the 70s and 80s. They witnessed the promise that women could have it all, followed by the reality that having it all often meant doing it all alone. This created a unique psychological defense mechanism. Gen X women learned to hope for the best while emotionally preparing for disappointment. Not cynicism exactly, but a kind of protective realism that younger generations often misinterpret as coldness or detachment. They cross their fingers for good outcomes but keep backup plans because, frankly, that's what kept working. Their relationship with romantic partnerships reflects this psychological foundation. Gen X women approach relationships with genuine desire for connection, but they never fully surrender their independence. They've seen too many women lose themselves in marriages that didn't last. They've watched friends become financially dependent only to find themselves trapped when things went wrong. So they maintain their own money, their own friends, their own interests, not because they don't believe in love, but because they believe in being prepared. This extends to their parenting philosophy in profound ways. Gen X mothers are simultaneously protective and hands-off. They give their children the attention they never received, but they're also determined to raise kids who can handle themselves. They worry about helicopter parenting because they understand the psychological value of struggle, of figuring things out independently, of learning that you can survive difficult situations. In professional settings, Gen X women developed strategies that seem almost foreign today. They don't announce their achievements on social media. They don't brand themselves or create personal platforms. They simply become indispensable through competence. They watched corporate loyalty destroy their parents' generation, so they built loyalty to their own skills instead. They're more likely to have multiple income streams, not for passion or entrepreneurship, but for security. Here's where their psychology gets really interesting. Gen X women formed friendships differently than any generation before or since. Without constant communication technology, their bonds were forged through shared experiences rather than constant updates. When someone needed help, you showed up physically. No posting about it, no public recognition, just quiet reliability. This created friendship patterns based on actions rather than words, depth rather than frequency. Their approach to authority is particularly telling. Gen X women don't respect titles or positions automatically. They respect competence and authenticity. If you've earned your role through actual skill, they'll follow your leadership anywhere. If you're relying on hierarchy or politics, they'll disengage immediately. They watch too many incompetent authority figures make terrible decisions throughout their childhood, from political scandals to institutional failures. The economic trauma this generation experienced cannot be understated. The youngest Gen X women graduated college right into the dot-com crash. The older ones were hitting their career stride when the 2008 financial crisis hit. They've been economically blindsided repeatedly, which shaped their relationship with money and security in ways that puzzle other generations. They're not materialistic, but they're acutely aware that financial independence equals freedom. This brings us to perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of Gen X women's psychology, their relationship with visibility. They grew up when mistakes weren't permanent, when embarrassing moments faded instead of going viral. Broadcasting personal information doesn't feel empowering to them, it feels dangerous. They learned early that the less people know about your vulnerabilities, the safer you are. But here's the paradox. Despite all this protective distance, Gen X women are incredibly loyal and supportive when it matters. They won't ask for help themselves, but they'll show up without fanfare when others need support. They've raised children while caring for aging parents, often without complaint or recognition. They've built careers while maintaining households, typically without domestic help or extended family support. Their humor serves as both connection and protection. The sarcasm, the self-deprecation, the ironic distance that younger generations sometimes find off-putting actually represent sophisticated emotional regulation. They learned to keep things light because taking everything seriously was overwhelming when adults constantly discussed catastrophe while insisting kids shouldn't worry. Perhaps most remarkably, Gen X women are watching their daughters grow up in a completely different world. One with constant supervision, endless documentation, and helicopter parenting they simultaneously provide and worry about. They gave their children the attention they never received, but sometimes they wonder if they've made them too dependent, too visible, too trusting of systems that might not hold. The truth is, Generation X women might be the last generation that truly understands solitude, boredom, and solving problems without immediately seeking external validation or answers. They're not better than other generations, just different, shaped by a unique historical moment when traditional gender roles were crumbling but new frameworks hadn't yet emerged. They're the bridge generation of women, and communities without asking for applause or recognition. And perhaps that's the most Generation X thing of all, doing essential work while expecting nothing in return, building the foundation that others stand on, and not caring whether anyone notices.